The Forbidden World. The Galactic Council had one rule: do not wake the humans. It was not just a suggestion or an advisory. It was law, written in the blood of those who had dared to ignore it. Every race in the known galaxy understood why. Humanity had once built an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds. They had risen from a single fragile planet to become the most feared species ever encountered. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they were relentless. They adapted, endured, and conquered in ways that defied logic. Then, just as their reach extended to the heart of the galaxy, they vanished. The official story was that they had destroyed themselves in the Great Stasis War, a final conflict so devastating that their homeworld, Earth, was left in ruin. But the truth was more unsettling. They had not died. They had slept. Cryogenic vaults buried beneath their ruined cities still held thousands, perhaps millions, of humans in frozen stasis. The Galactic Council, terrified of their return, placed Earth under strict quarantine. Automated defense systems surrounded the planet, and the Zalari archivists, a neutral scholarly species, were assigned as reluctant custodians. Their task was simple: ensure the humans were never disturbed. For centuries, that rule remained unbroken. Until today, the breach. Kalervan, a Zalari archivist, watched in horror as the Drex Dominion's warship descended through the dead sky. The Drex were a brutal, warmongering species, always searching for new ways to expand their empire. They had ignored every warning, every desperate plea Kalervan had made. They were after something specific: human relics, their technology, their DNA, anything that could be turned into a weapon. Kalervan's 6 slender fingers trembled as he adjusted the holographic display on his wrist. "Captain Dreth, you must not be here," he transmitted. "This world is forbidden." The Drex captain, a towering reptilian figure clad in thick combat armor, smirked through the holofeed. "Forbidden by cowards, archivist. We are not afraid of sleeping ghosts." He turned away, barking orders to his soldiers. "Move in. Find the cryo vaults." Kalervan could only watch as the Drex forces landed, spreading through the ruined human city like scavengers. The buildings, once grand spires of steel and glass, were now skeletal remains covered in vines and decay. The air was thick with ash, remnants of fires that had burned out centuries ago. Then they found it: a cryo vault buried beneath the rubble of an old skyscraper. Its reinforced doors, marked with faded warnings in a dead human language, still pulsed with power. The Drex engineers worked quickly, bypassing security protocols, overriding ancient locks. The vault was never meant to be opened, but it did. The massive doors groaned as they slid apart, revealing rows upon rows of frozen chambers. Within them lay figures, perfectly preserved, humans locked in time. Captain Dreth approached one of the pods, staring at the face of a man inside. The human's skin was pale, his expression peaceful, as if dreaming of a world that no longer existed. Dreth grinned. Pathetic. He raised his weapon. Then the alarm sounded. The awakening. The Drex had triggered something. A failsafe. A last defense against those who would dare violate the slumber of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Lights flickered on across the vault. Machines whirred to life. And one cryo chamber, just one, began the thawing sequence. Steam hissed as the glass covering the pod lifted. The figure inside convulsed, breath returning to lungs that had not drawn air in centuries. A heartbeat thundered in the silence. Then, the human's eyes snapped open. Captain Elias Voss had no idea where he was, what year it was, or why he was waking up. But instincts honed over years of battle took over. His mind screamed danger before he could even process his surroundings. His muscles, stiff from stasis, reacted as if no time had passed at all. He saw movement, armored figures, aliens pointing weapons at him. His body moved on reflex. Before the Drex could react, Elias lunged. He tore a weapon from one of the soldiers, flipped it in his hands, and fired. The first enemy fell before it could scream. The second staggered, armor useless against a point-blank shot. The others scrambled, their confidence shattered in an instant. Kaylair Van, still hidden behind the rubble, watched in disbelief. One human, just one, and already the mighty Drex were breaking. Captain Dreth roared in fury. Kill him. Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed the fallen soldier's knife, ducked under a plasma blast, and drove the blade into Dreth's throat. The captain gurgled, eyes wide in shock, before collapsing in a heap. The remaining Drex, panicked, fled toward their ship. Elias turned, chest rising and falling heavily. His mind raced. The city around him was unrecognizable. The air smelled wrong, and the only thing he knew for certain, this wasn't over. He looked down at the Zalari archivist, who cowered at his feet. Elias narrowed his eyes. Talk. And Kaylair Van, knowing the nightmare had just begun, whispered, The galaxy tried to bury you, but now you're awake. The awakening. Elias Voss stood over the trembling Zalari, gripping the stolen Drex rifle in his hands. His muscles still ached from cryo-sleep, but adrenaline kept him upright. His mind was a storm. He remembered going under, remembered the war, but not how it ended. Now, the world around him was nothing but ruin. How long? His voice came out hoarse, like it hadn't been used in centuries. Kaylair Van swallowed hard, his blue skin darkening in fear. At least 600 years, he stammered. Humanity was put into stasis after the Great War. The Galactic Council forbade anyone from waking you. 600 years. Elias clenched his jaw. Everything he knew, his home, his people, was dust. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. Where are the others? Kaylair Van hesitated. There are more vaults. Thousands, maybe millions of humans still in cryo-sleep. He glanced at the bodies of the Drex soldiers. If these invaders came for you, they will return. They won't stop until they have control over what remains of your species. Elias knew the type. He had fought their kind before. Those who saw humanity as a resource to exploit, a threat to neutralize, or worse, an opportunity to control. He couldn't let that happen. The Drex ship, a sleek black warcraft, loomed in the distance. If there were any survivors, they would be calling for reinforcements. Elias needed to act fast. The ruins of Earth. He forced his stiff legs to move, scanning the skeletal remains of the city around them. Towering skyscrapers had collapsed into rusted hulks, their glass windows shattered by centuries of decay. The sky was a dull, permanent gray, choked with debris. The air tasted metallic, and the once glistening rivers ran black with sludge. This wasn't the Earth he had left behind. It was a graveyard. Elias turned back to Kaylair Van. We need to move. Now. The Zalari hesitated. Where are we going? To find out what the hell happened. Elias led the way through the crumbling streets, weapon raised. Kaylair Van scurried behind him, still wary of the humans' every movement. The Drex ship loomed in the distance, but Elias wasn't heading for it. Not yet. He needed information first. Then he saw it. A structure, half buried in rubble, but still intact. Military-grade architecture. His gut told him it was important. The last war room. Elias approached the entrance, brushing away dirt from a faded insignia. UES Military Command, Secure Bunker 17. His chest tightened. He found the control panel near the door, fingers moving on instinct. The system flickered, struggling against time's decay, before a green light blinked to life. The doors groaned open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, the bunker was mostly intact. Dust coated the surfaces, but the reinforced walls had protected the equipment. Old terminals blinked weakly, and racks of weapons stood untouched. And at the center, a console still active, its screen pulsing with a single message. Awaiting command input. Elias stepped forward. Let's see what's left. His fingers danced across the console, bypassing security protocols with muscle memory. Old logs appeared on the screen. Records from the war, updates from commanders, desperate messages from the last days before the stasis protocol was enacted. He skimmed the reports. The war had turned against humanity. The Galactic Council, fearing Earth's growing power, had united against them. They bombarded the planet, cutting off its colonies, destroying its infrastructure. And then came the final decision. Project Stasis. Initiate planetary cryogenic lockdown. We will sleep, not surrender. Humanity will endure. Elias exhaled slowly. They hadn't lost. They had chosen to wait. AI Guardian. Then, another notification caught his eye. AI Directive active. Archon, 17 operational. Archon, Elias muttered. He tapped the screen. A deep, mechanical voice filled the room. Human presence detected. Identity, Captain Elias Voss. Status, active. Awaiting orders. A shock of familiarity ran through Elias. Archon had been the military's last-ditch failsafe, an artificial intelligence designed to maintain Earth's defenses and assist with humanity's reawakening. What's the current status of Earth's military assets? Elias asked. Severely compromised. Orbital defenses inactive. Automated war factories dormant. Cryovaults at 3% reactivation capacity. Enemy presence detected. Drex reinforcements inbound within 6 hours. Elias tightened his grip on the console. The Drex were coming back. He turned to Kayla Irvan. If we don't act now, they'll wipe out the rest of my people before they even wake up. Kayla Irvan looked conflicted. The Drex are powerful. They have an empire stretching across the sector. What can one human do against them? Elias smirked, the first hint of a grin since he woke up. You ever hear stories about what one human can do? The Zalari swallowed. Yes, and that's why I'm terrified. A signal in the dark. Elias turned back to the console. Archon, activate any remaining defense systems. Prep the war factories for reactivation. Confirmed. Limited functionality available. Would you like to send a reactivation signal to additional cryovaults? Elias hesitated. If he woke more humans, they would be vulnerable. But if he didn't, he would be alone when the Drex fleet arrived. He took a deep breath. Send the signal. Wake them up. The screen flickered, and across the ruins of Earth, hidden deep within buried bunkers, cryo chambers began to hum to life. The first ember of humanity's empire had been reignited, and when the Drex returned, they would learn the one lesson the galaxy had tried to forget. Never wake a sleeping giant. The ember of empire. The signal had been sent. Across the ruins of Earth, dormant cryo chambers hummed to life. Deep underground, beneath the shattered remains of cities, beneath the bones of a once mighty empire, the first embers of humanity's return flickered back to consciousness. Elias Voss stood in the dim light of the military bunker, fists clenched as he watched the status displays update. Cryopods across multiple vaults had begun the thawing process. It wouldn't be immediate. Some would take hours, others days, but humanity was waking up. And the Drex were coming. A war on the horizon. Archon, what's the enemy's estimated arrival time? Elias asked. The AI's voice was cold, efficient. Drex reinforcements will reach Earth's orbit in 5 hours, 22 minutes. Composition, 1 battleship-class vessel, 3 escort cruisers, 2 transport carriers. Estimated ground forces, 2,000 troops. Elias exhaled slowly. The Drex weren't wasting time. They knew they had triggered something dangerous, and they were coming to smother it before it could spread. He turned to Killer Van, who had been silently observing. If I were you, I'd leave now. The Zalari's eyes widened. And if I were you, I'd be running. Elias smirked. Not an option. Killer Van hesitated, then sighed. Then I suppose I will stay. The Drex won't spare me for helping you, and I would rather be on the winning side. Elias raised an eyebrow. You're betting on me? The Zalari nodded. I have studied human history, Captain Voss. I know what happens when someone tries to wipe you out. It never ends well for them. The last war factory. Elias turned his focus back to the bunker systems. They needed weapons, armor, vehicles, anything still operational. Archon, what's the status of war production facilities? Most are non-functional due to power grid collapse. However, Factory Complex Theta 12 remains operational at minimal capacity. That was all Elias needed to hear. The facility was only a few miles away, located beneath what had once been an industrial sector. If even a fraction of its production capabilities still worked, they had a fighting chance. We're heading there, Elias said. Gear up, rearming the Forgotten. The path to Theta 12 was treacherous. The ruins of the city were unstable, with entire sections collapsed into underground caverns. Ash still drifted through the air, the scent of ancient destruction lingering like a ghost. But as they neared the factory, Elias saw something unexpected. A massive steel gate, still intact. Towers of automated turrets, long dormant, flickered with renewed power. The Drex had overlooked this place, assuming Earth was nothing but a wasteland. They were wrong. Elias approached the control panel and pressed his palm against the biometric scanner. The system hesitated, then flickered green. Identity confirmed. Captain Elias Voss. Authorization accepted. With a deep, mechanical groan, the gates opened. Inside, the facility was a relic of humanity's last war. Assembly lines stretched across the underground chamber, towering machines waiting for orders. Rows of exosuits, weapons, and armored transports stood in perfect stasis. Elias whistled. Damn, it's like they knew we'd be back. Kale Van ran his fingers over a sleek plasma rifle. This technology, it's centuries old, yet it still surpasses modern Galactic Council standards. Elias activated a console, and Archon's voice echoed through the factory. Initializing rapid manufacturing protocol. Limited resources available. Prioritizing infantry weapons and defensive systems. Machines roared to life. Automated arms moved with precision, assembling rifles, body armor, explosives. Massive mechanical forges reignited, melting down ancient wreckage into fresh ammunition. And within the cryo chambers scattered across Earth, the first soldiers of a lost empire began to rise. The first to wake. Elias felt it before he saw it. The shift in the air, the subtle hum of life returning. Then the first chamber hissed open. A figure stumbled forward, coughing as frost melted from his skin. His eyes locked onto Elias. Captain Voss. His voice was raspy, uncertain. Elias stepped forward. The man's face was familiar. Corporal Ryan Hale, one of the best close combat specialists Elias had ever served with. Yeah, I'm here, Elias said. You good, Corporal? Hale blinked, trying to process his surroundings. Last thing I remember, the war. The evacuation order. Then nothing. His gaze hardened. How long? Elias hesitated, then said, 600 years. Hale's expression darkened. And the enemy? Elias handed him a rifle. On their way. The corporal's fingers closed around the weapon, grip steady. No more questions. No hesitation. Just understanding. And then another chamber opened. And another. One by one, soldiers stepped into the ruined world, their minds catching up to a reality they had never prepared for. Their empire was gone. Their home was in ruins. But war? War hadn't changed. The dawn of retribution. As the factory roared with life, Elias turned his gaze to the sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the Drex fleet was closing in, thinking they were coming to crush the last remnants of a dead race. They had no idea what awaited them. He turned to the newly awakened soldiers, their armor gleaming under the flickering lights. This is what's left of Earth, he told them. The Council tried to erase us. The Drex think they can finish the job. He gestured toward the weapons, the vehicles, the towering machines built for war. But they made one mistake. He strapped on his own armor, feeling its weight settle on his shoulders. They let us wake up. The soldiers grinned, old instincts firing back to life. The Drex fleet was coming, and humanity would be ready. The first battle of the new war. The Drex fleet pierced through Earth's dead atmosphere like a spear thrust into a sleeping beast. 6 ships, 1 battleship, 3 cruisers, and 2 troop carriers descended, their thrusters cutting through the thick, ash-laden sky. They expected no resistance. They were wrong. The stand at Theta 12. Elias Voss stood atop a makeshift command platform within the war factory. Around him, soldiers were gearing up, rifles charged, armor strapped on, combat formations drilled into muscle memory. Even after centuries of sleep, they moved with deadly efficiency. A holographic map of the battlefield flickered before him. The Drex would land within minutes, targeting the ruins of the city first. Their arrogance would be their downfall. They thought humanity was a relic of history, waiting to be looted. Elias turned to Killer Van, who stood nervously beside the console. "You said you studied human warfare. How do you think this plays out?" Killer Van swallowed. "Statistically, the Drex have superior numbers, modern weapons, and orbital support. You have outdated technology, a fraction of their forces, and no escape." Elias smirked. "Good. Let's prove statistics wrong." He turned to his soldiers. "We don't have the numbers for a direct fight, so we don't give them one. We use the city. We use the ruins. They expect scavengers. We show them hunters. The ambush." The first Drex landing craft touched down in the center of the ruined city. Massive, hulking reptilian warriors stomped out, their black armor gleaming under the gray sky. Plasma rifles in hand, they spread out, scanning for movement. Silence. Then the first explosion. A Drex squad patrolling near a collapsed building never saw the charge buried beneath the rubble. It detonated, sending steel and stone shrapnel through their ranks. Before the smoke cleared, human snipers hidden in the ruins opened fire, precision shots piercing through Drex helmets and skulls. Panic rippled through the enemy ranks. The Drex were used to overpowering lesser species, not being hunted in the dark. From the shadows, humanity struck. Hale led a fire team through the ruins, moving like ghosts. They flanked a group of Drex warriors taking cover behind a collapsed highway, cutting them down with suppressed plasma fire. Another team, using scavenged Drex explosives, collapsed an entire building onto an enemy walker. By the time the Drex command realized they had walked into a trap, their first landing force was gone. Counterattack, but the Drex weren't fools. Their commander, war leader Korak, adapted quickly. The second wave came down harder, gunships screaming overhead, strafing the ruins with plasma barges. Heavier infantry dropped from transports, their armor impervious to small arms. They pushed forward, forcing humanity's fighters to retreat deeper into the city. Elias watched it unfold from his command position in Theta 12. He could see the pattern forming. The Drex wanted them cornered, boxed in, where their superior firepower would overwhelm the last human resistance. He had no intention of letting that happen. "Killer Van," Elias called. "How much firepower do we have left in this factory?" The Zalari tapped into the console. "We have one functional siege railgun, but no orbital targeting system." Elias grinned. "We don't need to hit orbit, just the right spot on the ground." He turned to Archon. "Link targeting to my HUD. I'll paint the shot." Acknowledged. Railgun charge at 82%. Firing sequence locked on your command. Elias grabbed his rifle and sprinted toward the battlefield. The killing blow. The Drex forces had finally forced the human survivors into a defensive pocket near the ruins of an old skyscraper. War leader Korak stood on a command platform, watching his troops close in. "The last of them," he muttered. 600 years, and this is all that remains." Then his communicator crackled. "Sir, we have a problem. The humans." A shot rang out. The transmission cut. Korak turned, eyes scanning the battlefield. Something was wrong. His instinct screamed danger, but he was Drex. He feared nothing. And then he saw him, a single human sprinting across the rubble, rifle in hand, armor scorched, but still standing. Korak sneered. "Kill him." Drex rifles lit up, plasma bolts cutting through the air. But Elias moved fast, weaving through debris, leaping across broken structures. His HUD locked onto its target, the center of the Drex command structure. He reached the top of a ruined transport, raised his arm, and activated his targeting beacon. "Archon," Elias growled. "Fire." A moment of silence. Then the sky split open. A deafening crack shattered the air as the railgun in Theta 12 discharged. The hypersonic projectile ripped through the atmosphere like a falling star, striking the Drex command post with the force of a meteor. The entire area erupted in fire and steel. Korak's final thought before the blast consumed him was one of disbelief. They weren't supposed to be this strong. Aftermath. The Drex assault crumbled in seconds. Leaderless and scattered, their forces fell back, retreating toward their remaining ships. Humanity, relentless as ever, pursued. By the time the last Drex transport lifted off, they had lost over 80% of their landing force. Elias stood amidst the smoking battlefield, bloodied but alive. Around him his soldiers gathered, tired, wounded, but victorious. Kalier Van approached, his expression unreadable. "That was unexpected." Elias smirked. "That's humanity for you." Hale walked up, resting his rifle on his shoulder. "So what now, Captain?" Elias turned his gaze toward the sky. The Drex would return, and the Galactic Council would soon learn that humanity had awoken. "We rebuild," Elias said. "We rearm." He locked eyes with his soldiers. "And then we remind the galaxy why they were afraid of us in the first place."